Hey everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm starting on time tonight at the appointed time, and that's the way I like to do it. So glad we started on time. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Yet another one of our great late night conversations here from my lovely Brooklyn apartment. Yeah, let's go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Now, the way these streams work is I give my opening remarks, whatever it is I want to talk about. And while I give my opening remarks, I am taking note of your questions as they come in, your Rumble rants, your super chats as they come in. I'm taking note of them and aware of them. And then after I give my opening remarks, from there, I do a roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, after I've answered your after I've done the roll call and after I've done the opening remarks, then I answer your super chat questions. That is the way it works. And I must say, the last few nights, you guys have been amazing with the super chats. You have gotten me talking up, down, backwards, and forwards about topics that I like to talk about. You have got me answering questions that I can answer, and it's been beautiful. So keep it up, keep me talking. I am here to answer your questions. And I will say, I am here to give you answers, not to give you bullshit. I am not here to give you some rigmarole or some gobbledygook. If you ask me what Lenin's theory of imperialism is, I will tell you what Lenin's theory of imperialism is. If you ask me how Mao was able to come to power in 1949, I will tell you how Mao was able to come to power in 1949. If you ask me to explain the contributions of Fidel Castro to Marxism, I will tell you that. If you ask me to explain why the Taiwan issue is so important to China, I will tell you that. Right? I am here to answer your questions. I'm not here to give you gobbledygook. I'm not here to give you a runaround, etc. And that is what makes these streams so special, is that you ask, and every so often, someone will ask something that I just don't know about, and I can't answer. And if I don't know something, I will tell you that I don't know it. I will not bullshit my way around it. So that, the question and answer session of our streams is really, really valuable. It's a really valuable part of what we do here. So I look forward to that. First, the opening remarks, then the roll call, then me answering your questions. Now, before I get into that, we do have some announcements. First big announcement is this afternoon, I spoke to Dr. Shiva, the PhD, the inventor of email, the guy who is running for president, who's a critic of the establishment out of MIT. It was an interesting conversation. So if you haven't had a chance to watch my chat with Dr. Shiva, go ahead and check it out. It was certainly amusing. And tomorrow morning, I will be having a chat with my good friend, Tara Reid. Tara Reid has fled the country for Russia. She is a brilliant political analyst with RT, does a lot of great commentary. She's got a new book in the works, and I am going to be talking with Tara Reid tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Moscow time in Russia. So tune in to that. That's Tara Reid tomorrow morning. Then, after I talk to Tara Reid, I am heading up to Queens. I'm heading up to Queens, New York. And the reason that I'm headed up to Queens, New York, is because I have to pick up many hundreds of copies of this beautiful pamphlet. Why is it not showing it on the screen? I will show you the video. I'm picking up many copies of this beautiful pamphlet. Yeah. Here, we'll just roll it back so you can see the cover. Do you believe in growth? Why Russia and China keep rising while U.S. society stifles innovation. I am going to be picking up bundles and bundles and bundles of this that we got printed from a local printer here in New York City. And I'm very excited because these pamphlets are going to be distributed in the Bronx. I'm sorry, they're going to be distributed in Washington, D.C. At the Libertarian Party convention. And we're hoping to then distribute them at the Democrat National Convention, at the Republican National Convention. This is a great pamphlet we have written to explain what the Center for Political Innovation is all about. I will be going to pick them up tomorrow from the printer, and it's very exciting. And then Peter and I are headed to D.C. Friday night. So if you're in the D.C. area, give me a shout out. I've reached out to a few people in the area. We're going to be at the Libertarian Party convention all day, handing out these pamphlets to everyone there. So if you'd like to be there, help out with the leafleting, maybe, go chill at a restaurant and get to know each other. If you're part of our CPI community and you would like to get to know us a little bit better, by all means, reach out. Saturday, I will be in Washington, D.C. for the Trump appearance at the Libertarian Party convention. We're planning to be there all day. That's going to be pretty awesome. And if you would like to help out with the printing costs, you can send me a contribution on Cash App. Cash App, Caleb Maupin 22. Every little bit helps with the printing costs. Printing those pamphlets is not cheap. We did find a good deal, but we're printing many thousands of these glossy pamphlets. So if you can help out with the printing of the pamphlets, contributions to offset the printing costs, as well as the cost of me getting my ass all the way up to Queens to pick them up, and the cost of going to DC and the hotel and, the night before. And if you can help with that, help is always appreciated. So Cash App is appreciated. You want to send $10, $20, or more than that, that would be great. Shout out to everyone who has already sent it. It has been greatly appreciated. The little bit that we've gotten has actually made a big difference. So thank you. And if you want to help us out with that, great. So that is the next big thing we're doing Saturday, Washington, D.C. for the Libertarian Party convention. Now, those of you who are in Los Angeles, if you're in the LA area, if you're in Southern California, there's a good chance, not confirmed, but a good chance that I'm headed out there June 8th or 9th. There'll be an event, possibly, not confirmed, out in LA on June 8th and 9th. Not confirmed. I'm having a meeting about it tomorrow to see what the deal is, to see if we're going to go ahead and announce and schedule this and whatnot. So if you are in the Los Angeles area, and you're able to join us on June 8th or 9th, send me an email. That'll be helpful. And hopefully I'll be announcing that we're having an event out there pretty soon. It is not yet confirmed. So there you go. Check out the interview I did with Dr. Shiva this afternoon. It was fun. Check out tomorrow morning the event that I am doing, the conversation I'm having with Tara Reid. That's going to be very awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Tara Reid's in Russia, and we're going to be talking current events, Iran, etc. It's going to be good. And then Saturday, Washington, D.C., distributing the Libertarian pamphlet, the pamphlet aimed at libertarians. Do you believe in growth? Let me try to put the image on the screen one more time. I do not know why it is not letting me show images on my screen. Why is it? That's weird. It seems to have no problem with videos, but images it doesn't like. That is extremely, extremely odd. But what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? So let me see that if I can put it in using the slides feature, right? Let me see if I can do that, right? Maybe they've changed it. Maybe I have to use the slides feature. So I add file, upload file, right? No, that doesn't work. That wants a PDF. Very odd. Very, very odd. I don't know what the deal is. But yeah, that's very, very weird. But anyhow, the pamphlet looks like this. Right, here's the video of it at least. It's going to be great. Do you believe in growth? We're taking it to DC for the Libertarian Convention. Yeah, do you believe in growth? Why U.S. society stifles innovation while Russia and China keep rising? We've got hundreds and hundreds and bundles of them that I'm picking up tomorrow. So if you'd like to make a contribution to offset the print costs, the best way to do that would be to Cash App me, Caleb Maupin, $Caleb Maupin 22 would be the best way. Small contributions go a long way. If you can help offset the cost, that would make my life easier and a little bit less stressful. But regardless, we're heading to DC. And then if you are in the Los Angeles area, if you're in the LA area, get in touch because there's a good chance we're having an event out in LA either June 8th or 9th, but it is not yet confirmed. So there you go. Those are our announcements for tonight. So now I'm going to get into my opening remarks and then we'll do the roll call. And then after that, I will answer your questions for tonight. I see we've already got a question that has come in, and that's great. And I'm looking forward to answering it. So think about what you want me to talk about in the second half of the show. And now I will get into my opening remarks. Friends, the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, died in a helicopter crash. And it is very tragic. And the foreign minister also died. Their entire crew, their entire entourage died. Very, very sad. A very, very sad thing to happen to a country. We've done extensive analysis of this. I'm not ruling out the possibility that this was an intentional death. It wasn't completely an accident, that there was some involvement by hostile forces. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not ready to say that that happened yet. I understand why people in Iran might feel that way. After all, the United States did shoot down an Iranian aircraft in 1988 and never apologized. After all, the USA did murder Qasem Soleimani, national leader of the Islamic Revolution. After all, Israel has been murdering Iranian officials. So the idea that this is some kind of foreign act of aggression, it's certainly not an absurd thing to claim. It's certainly, it's not absurd to think it would happen. I am not yet convinced that that is the case. There are plenty of people online who are absolutely sure, but I'm not, right? I always say that, you shouldn't say things unless you really know them. And I mean, I'm just, I'm open to the possibility of this being some kind of intentional killing, but I'm not ready to say that yet, right? I'm waiting for investigation. I'm waiting for facts, etc. I don't agree that there should be ridicule or condemnation of those who say it because I think it honestly makes sense and it fits a pattern of behavior toward Iran from Western leaders. But I'm open to different possibilities. Now, that said, one thing that I find absolutely infuriating is that there is an attempt to claim in Western media that no one in Iran cares. I mean, and it's absurd. How would the guy's the president of the country? And they have taken photographs of empty streets and tried to say that no one in Iran is mourning the loss of the president. They're actually doing this. They are all over Zionist Twitter, all over anti-Iran Twitter, all over Iranian expats living in Southern California Twitter. You will find people with pictures of empty streets. Look, nobody's mourning for the president. They all hate the regime. It's infuriating. I mean, how can they say this? Right? There is video of the crowds mourning the president. There is video of the crowds mourning the president.
والا دلشون میخواست امروز حرم امام رضا باشه زهر سرا و گنبد و بارگاه و ملکوتی امام رؤوف نوکر دست سینه دست ما ایرونیاست
I mean, and look at the thumbnail that I have for tonight's stream. Now, for some reason, StreamYard is giving me difficulty showing pictures on here. I can show film clips, no problem, but for some reason, it's giving me trouble showing pictures. But they had at least 500,000 people in the streets in a display of mourning. I mean, a huge crowds clad in black mourning the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But that does not stop Western media outlets from just lying. And what bothers me is not so much that they lie, because we can expect them to lie. What bothers me is that you prove that this is a lie, and there's no double take on the part of the people listening to the liars. And the next time the anti-Iran crowd comes out with another obvious lie, they believe it, right? And so you debunk one lie, and then another lie comes out. And there are these people that are just so predisposed to believe anything negative about Iran, anything that indicates that the people in Iran don't stand with the Islamic Republic. There are some people that are just so predisposed to believe that after a very obvious lie like this, they see it debunked, and then they go, oh, and then they just look for another thing that will confirm what they already believe. And I find that to be infuriating. You know, if somebody is going to lie to you that blatantly, they are going to tell you that nobody in Iran cares about the president of the country dying. They're going to say no one's mourning. They're going to show you a picture of an empty street and go, look, no one cares. And then video comes out that is real, that is confirmed, showing that 500,000 people were walking through the country mourning and crying for the president, holding placards of his face. At some point, these people have to go, wait, maybe I shouldn't believe this. But there are some people that are just so predisposed to believe anything negative, and I find that infuriating. And those are the people that I want to shake, right? The liars, I expect the liars to lie. What I don't appreciate is the people that are so dug in to a pro-establishment way of seeing things, so dug into that they believe a lie, they see a lie thoroughly debunked, they go, oh, and then the next lie comes out and they believe that one just as much. And that is my frustration. And, you know, I mean, it's just like how every U.S. war, every U.S. military intervention is preceded with a lie, right? Remember Libya, right? Gaddafi was handing out Viagra, supposedly, and he was given Viagra to soldiers so they could rape women. He was going to go house to house in Benghazi and kill everyone. That's all been debunked. That was all a lie. And I knew it was a lie at the time, and I said so. I mean, I didn't know, but I had a feeling if you looked at it, didn't sound like Gaddafi. And other people were in Libya, and they noticed Gaddafi was so confident that people would point their guns in the right direction. He had his military just going out, handing out guns randomly on the street because he knew the people were with him. And the idea that Gaddafi is handing out Viagra so his soldiers could rape women, the idea that he's going to kill all the people of one of the most prosperous cities in Libya, he's going to go house to house and kill them all, didn't sound true, but some people just believed it. And that's how Barack Obama tricked so many people into supporting the destruction of the most prosperous country on the African continent. Libya had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. And then we got shown a bunch of videos on Facebook that said, oh, Gaddafi's killing people. Oh, we got to move in right now. Innocent people are going to be killed. Oh my God, it's so, and it was a lie, right? Do you remember Iraq? Right? The Naria testimony. Do you remember the infamous Naria testimony in Iraq? Let me see if I can find a video of it, right? The Naria testimony. Famous, right? This woman She was crying about the babies. The babies, they're going to take babies out of incubators and they're killing the babies, and it's just so awful. And they showed it over and over and over again on CNN. And, we just had to invade Iraq. We just had to go to war in Iraq because the babies, oh my God, they saw the woman. And later it was proven that this woman was never in Iraq. She was never in Kuwait to see the babies, get thrown out of the incubators. She was a member of the Kuwaiti royal family, was living in the United States. She didn't even testify under oath when she gave her sob story. They had a special congressional session where she didn't testify under oath so that she couldn't be charged with committing perjury. But they showed this clip I'm about to show you. They showed it on CNN over and over and over again. And this is how they convinced the U.S. public to support sending the military to the Persian Gulf. And they showed it, I believe, like 50 times in a day on CNN.
And we finally call on Naira to testify.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying.
And it didn't happen. And that was a lie. And she was a fucking actress. She was a fucking actress, and she'd never been to Kuwait. She was not in Kuwait when this happened. She's a member of the royal family. They didn't even have her testify under oath. It was a lie.
And we finally call on Naira to testify.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait.
And you're a liar. And we found out you're a paid actress. This was staged propaganda to get us into the Gulf War. It was literally a sob story. The babies.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubator.
Oh, what a bad person you are, Caleb, for not wanting the USA to send its troops into Iraq. Oh my God, look at her crying. Look at this. Look at those tears, Caleb. You're a bad person. We got to wave the flag and support the U.S. government dropping bombs on the Iraqi people. Look, she's crying.
Bears took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold.
What a bad person you are if you don't immediately support a U.S. military intervention. You're an awful human being. Look, she's crying. We don't even know what her last name is. Turns out she wasn't actually in Kuwait. She never could have seen this. Turns out she didn't even testify under oath. Turns out the whole thing was paid for by a public relations firm, that she's the daughter of members of the Kuwaiti royal family. The whole thing was fake.
It was horrifying.
Yeah, it is horrifying. And they showed her on TV over and over and over again to convince the American people that we just had to invade. We had to send troops into Kuwait. We had to bomb Iraq. We had to have a war. And later we found out it was a lie. We found out it was a big fat lie, just like the Benghazi thing with Gaddafi, just like the weapons of mass destruction that they used to justify the invasion of Iraq. You remember that one? The weapons of mass destruction. Okay, Caleb. Well, maybe Naria was lying about Iraq. You know what I mean? But Caleb, I mean, the weapons of mass destruction. Now Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. He's gonna bomb us. Saddam Hussein worked with Al Qaeda to plan 9/11, and he's going to cause another terror attack. And he is responsible, and he's got weapons of mass destruction. All right. And that was all a big lie. Right. It was all a lie. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It was all a fabrication. They lied because they wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein, because Saddam Hussein was a competitor on the international oil markets. He was a challenger of U.S. power. That's all it was. That's all that it was. And then after they revealed that there were no weapons of mass destruction, they moved the goalpost. Suddenly, the reason they invaded was to give the Iraqi people their freedom. It wasn't about weapons of mass destruction. Well, geez, how many countries in the world could one argue that the people don't have freedom? I think there's many, many countries in this world where one could argue they don't have freedom. Just so happens the one that had to be invaded was Iraq. I mean, the whole thing was a lie, right? Just like the claim that, they've now admitted that Slobodan Milosevic was not committing genocide, right? That there were atrocities in Serbia, absolutely. But Slobodan Milosevic was not committing genocide against ethnic Albanians. There were war crimes and atrocities on both sides of the war. But Bill Clinton bombed Serbia and got away with it. And the same people tell the same lies. And there's a group of people who just never learn. And that is who my frustration is with. The people who never learn. The people who, yeah, it was a lie last time, but they believe it and they just stick to it. And people like you and I that have seen this movie over and over and over and over again, we've seen this movie. We know how these wars work. We know how the lies to justify these wars work, right? Yeah, she wasn't even testifying because she wasn't under oath. I mean, we see this. We see this happen over and over and over again, and we urge people not to be fooled, not to fall for it. And it gets a little bit frustrating. It does get a little bit frustrating to see people who fall for this. Just like there are people now who believe that nobody in Iran is mourning President Raisi, right? There's just, I'm telling you, there are people who believe this, right? And you get on Twitter and you look at it, all kinds of Zionists. No one in the country is mourning him. Nope. No one. I saw a picture. There's an empty. No one's fallen. I mean, and it's just, it's like, how do these people fall for this over and over again, right? Not how do the liars lie, because liars lie. That's what they do. But how do people fall for this? That is the frustrating point. Right? Every U.S. war begins with a lie, every single one. And when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Russia, when it comes to China, when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Cuba, when it comes to North Korea, they will say all kinds of bullshit. And people just believe it. And they don't bother to look into it. And these lies are used to justify wars and sanctions and military interventions and the funding of extremist groups and terrorists. These lies have real implications. They have real consequences in real life. People really die because of these ugly lies, right? They're not harmless. They're not meaningless. These lies have serious consequences. And I just wanted to get that out of my system. Now, I've got a couple other things I want to talk about for tonight. The first of which is yesterday I did a story about how the USA is about to have its first official visit from an African leader in 15 years. The last time the United States hosted an African leader was the president of Ghana in 2009. So now we have got Biden hosting the president of Kenya. And so I did a story about this because the reason that he's hosting the president of Kenya is because Kenya, the Kenyan police are leading a number of different African countries that are sending military and police forces into Haiti. And basically, Biden realizes that sending the U.S. Army into Haiti is a bad look. So he's got all the U.S. aligned African governments, because the Haitian people are black and because the Africans are black. He's having all the U.S. aligned regimes send their military into Haiti. And, they'll say, well, this isn't an invasion, Caleb. The Haitian government invited them in. No, there is no elected Haitian government, right? They haven't had an elected government. The Constitution has been completely overturned. There hasn't been an elected president in the country since the last one was killed. The current president is staying in office and refusing to step down. The people are out in the country in the streets rioting against him. And the USA has gotten all of its African proxy governments to send their military and police into Haiti. They don't want to have the white American troops go in there. The U.S. imperialist, forces go in there. So they're using the African proxy forces led by Kenya to go into Haiti. And so I'm going to show you my story on that was on RT yesterday.
Kenya's president is on an official visit to Washington. It comes amid deep divisions at home over his plans to send troops to the Caribbean island nation of Haiti. RT's Caleb Maupin picks up the story.
Now, the president of Kenya is expected to shake a lot of hands, do a lot of photo ops, a typical diplomatic visit. However, underlying it all will be the recent announcement that Kenya is leading a number of African countries to send police forces into Haiti. Now, the United States doesn't want to get directly involved. It wouldn't be a good look internationally. So instead, we have a number of African countries that are aligned with the United States that are moving in, and Kenya is taking the lead.
In view of the decision of the courts in our republic, essentially guiding how Kenya should be able to carry out this deployment. And we are in the process, or government is in the process of finalizing preparation to deploy.
Now, Kenya is adamant this isn't an illegal invasion or occupation of Haiti. This is simply an intervention done at the request of the Haitian government, the very same Haitian government that the people of the country are currently rioting and rebelling against.
The request must be made by a democratically elected president of the requesting country. Haiti does not have a president since the killing of Jovenel Moïse in July 2021. The former Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, who actually resigned at the time, did not have those powers under the Constitution of Haiti, and therefore making the whole reciprocal agreement a nullity from the very beginning.
Now, the visit comes as the United States is currently losing ground on the African continent. A recent Gallup poll shows that Africans have a far less favorable view of the United States compared to other major countries and superpowers. Now, it's important to note that there's a number of African countries that recently asked the United States and its forces to pack up and leave. There hasn't been an official visit to the United States from an African leader since 2009. It's been roughly 15 years since Ron Coffer of Ghana had the red carpet rolled out for him by U.S. President George W. Bush.
President Biden's foreign policy has been a disaster on every continent, and Africa is no exception. While the Russians and Chinese are working overtime to oust the U.S. from a region that will soon be home to a quarter of the Earth population, the Biden administration continues to fumble the ball and weaken our nation's strategic interests with our African partners.
Now, President Ruto is also facing problems back in Kenya. In 2023, the country experienced rioting as food and fuel prices were skyrocketing. It's also got rising national debt. Now, he's expected to address the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and make clear that Kenya, his homeland, is a prime spot for investment. News of the trip back home has been overshadowed by rising anger about potential tax hikes, as well as corruption, and feelings that the government response to flooding that killed 160 people was mismanaged. Some are less than thrilled about the prospect of Kenyan involvement in Haiti.
Even right now, there is a court matter, there is a petition at the High Court opposing the deployment of Kenyan troops to Haiti, something that the US is really pushing. But we know that the current president, William Ruto, is just doing it for the sake of money. The US had promised $100 million, and other countries had also promised up to $300 million. And this is what the government is looking at. Instead of looking at the interests of the people internally, instead of looking at the security, it's just for money. And most Kenyans are actually in opposition to this deployment. But the US is really insisting, and we believe that that will be top of the agenda. We hope the Kenyan courts will once again stop this deployment of Kenyan policemen to Haiti. So it is just a situation where Kenya is still a neo-colonial state, a state that begs, a state that sees itself inferior to the US, and that is why the president was invited.
It's no secret that Africa is drifting closer to Russia and China as the world moves toward multipolarity. However, Ruto seems like the kind of leader who is trying to hold on to that old setup, and Joe Biden has no problem giving him a rainbow tour. What remains to be seen is, amid all the lights and handshakes, how well American mainstream media will be able to obscure the reality of what's happening on the ground in Haiti and back in Africa. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York. Yeah, so I did that report yesterday. I went to the Africa Center in Harlem. That's actually where I filmed it, was at the Africa Center in Harlem, which that's the building with all those flags on it. Really nice building. So before I end my opening remarks, I wanted to just kind of react to two other pieces, by different voices online. The first one is a short essay by Bob Avakian, the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party. He's been making these like short little like video essays for his YouTube channel. He's been making them, and they're I mean, I don't know what to say about them. They're amusing, I should say, I guess. I don't know. They're, he's clearly frustrated with wokeism, but at the same time, he still has Trump derangement syndrome. He still thinks Trump is the most evil thing, that Republicans are the most evil thing. And so he posted this essay, and I listened to it, and I was amused. And it's not very long. It's a pretty short piece, so I'm just going to react to it point by point. This is Bob Avakian, his essay. He's been giving them numbers, right? I don't know why, but this is Revolution 41.
Bob Avakian, Revolution number 41.
It's a little, I don't know why he's doing that. These are 2-minute videos, but he's giving them anyway.
The fundamental problem we are dealing with is not white heteronormative patriarchy.
Again, for communists, that would be common sense until the rise of woke, right? White heteronormative patriarchy is some academic woke bullshit, right? It's actually capitalism and imperialism and, the oppression of people and the oppressive relations that come with it. But the synthetic left has very much decided, no, we can't use those words. We can't talk about that. We need to talk about how certain identities suffer, and we need to atomize and break people down into different identities, and we need to get as far away from the ideology of the actually Marxist governments in the world. So there you go.
The system we are up against is not just some arrangement where straight white males lord it over everybody else.
Again, would be common sense to people who call themselves communists until recently.
This system has all this oppression built into it, including oppression based on nationality and race, sex and gender. But all this rests on a certain foundation, a definite mode of production, the way the economy is organized and functions.
Agree, 100% agree. And that the identity politics campus left does everything they can to get away from talking about it. They call that class reductionism. If you bring up the economic base, they don't want to hear it. They want to make it all about good people and bad people. And good people are oppressed and are victims, and bad people have privilege and don't flog themselves and shame themselves enough for it. And Marxism, as a doctrine, as a school of thought, does not talk about good people and bad people. It talks about the economic base, the mode of production, and the relations that flow from it. So what these woke people are talking about good people and bad people and all of that, it's not Marxism, right? Someone tell the conservatives that, and someone tell these people that.
As I have emphasized before, if you don't understand this, you don't really understand the actual problem or the actual solution. Capitalist exploitation is not a white European invention. Oppression is not just a white or a male or a straight white male thing. And imperialism is not just European countries dominating and robbing countries and peoples they have colonized. As I pointed out in message number 21, things like racism and misogyny, hatred of women, are not built-in characteristics of white people and men. And the attitude of looking out for yourself and to hell with everybody else is not hardwired into human beings.
Why does he have to say this? Right? I mean, you would think that anybody who knows anything about Marxism and communism would know this, but he has to say this because there is this toxic, hateful, destructive ideology that they're pushing on the campuses. That makes it, that really does push the notion that there's just something inherently wrong with Europeans, inherently wrong with males, inherently wrong with straight people, inherently wrong with the traditional family, and that we just need to pound into everyone's head why they're wrong. And also accepts the idea that human beings are just naturally selfish, just naturally, and none of that has anything to do with Mao or Lenin or Stalin or Marx or any of that. It's all just, it's an invention of the American power structure.
All these things are products of the system that people are forced to live under. The oppressive economic, political, and social relations of the system, and the ideas and culture that reflect and reinforce those relations. And, in general, throughout human history, in any part of the world where people have been divided into masters and slaves, upper and lower classes, this has been accompanied by the idea that those in the superior position are somehow, by their very nature, superior as human beings, and those in the lower position are inferior human beings.
Absolutely. Whether it's, you go back to ancient Greece, Plato talks about the myth of the metals, the idea that the people that are the kings, they have a special kind of metal in their blood, and it's different than the poor people. You have the bell curve, this idea that some races are just inferior to others. There's a huge effort to try and claim that social hierarchies are just natural, and poor people are poor because they're inferior, and the rich are rich because they're just so amazing, and everything is just perfect, so nothing needs to change. That is a really, really common thing. And it was believed in the Middle Ages, and it was promoted. The monarchs claimed they had the divine right from God to rule over everybody else. And then social Darwinism, survival of the fittest, was used, to say that, oh, white Europeans are just the fittest. That's what gives them the right to rule over and genocide everybody else. Yes, I mean, yeah, from the beginning of oppressive relations, there has been an attempt by the oppressors to claim that they're just naturally the best.
This has been true in ancient as well as more modern empires and countries in Asia, Africa, and the Americas, as well as Europe. For example, the Asian country of Japan is a capitalist imperialist country. Its development as a country based on the exploitation and oppression of masses of people goes back far beyond any significant involvement with Europeans.
Very true. The Japanese imperialists murdered millions of people in Korea. They murdered millions of people in the Philippines. They colonized Okinawa. They still hold Okinawa as a colony. They killed millions of people in China, massacres at Nanking, and, the crimes of Japanese imperialism all across the Pacific and all across Asia are massive, right? And, Japan was just as much an imperialist as the West. And they committed crimes against humanity, and they tortured people. They kept Korean women as comfort women. They mass exterminated people in Chinese villages and cities. I mean, the Japanese imperialism, Japanese colonialism to make super profits for Japanese, capitalists and bankers was a reality until the Second World War.
And there are crucial lessons to be learned from the role of Japan in the period leading into and during the Second World War, the period of the 1930s and early 1940s. During that time, the Japanese capitalist imperialists were determined to replace European countries as the dominant imperialist power in the rest of Asia. Their goal was not to bring about liberation for the people in those Asian countries, but to bring about Japanese imperialist plunder of those countries and exploitation of their peoples. But the Japanese imperialists did this in the name of Asian identity and opposition to European domination.
That is very true. The Japanese claimed that they were representing what they called Asian values or Asian principles, and that's what gave them the right to slaughter, murder, colonize, and enslave millions of other Asian people, right? Is that we have the Asian way of doing things, the samurai, right? This was Shinzo Abe nationalism. You're absolutely right, right? The Japanese are the inheritors of this Asiatic way of doing things. We're different than the Europeans. We're not Christian, right? We are, and that is totally true, right? Everything he's pointing out here is true.
They invaded and occupied many other Asian countries, including China, and the invading and occupying Japanese troops carried out the most horrific atrocities against the masses of people in those countries, including mass rape of women. Why did the Japanese imperialists do this? Not just because they were depraved hypocrites, but most fundamentally because of the nature and needs of the system of capitalism imperialism.
Bingo. They did it because it was in their economic interest, right? It's not because they have, like, what is it the LaRouche people say? Oh, it's the oligarchical view of mankind. It's just these bad ideas, the oligarchical view of mankind. I heard them, say that. No, they do it to make money. They do it because they want to stay at the top of the pyramid. They want to make super profits. Why do people always have to look for some other thing? I mean, the U.S. imperialists want to keep the world poor so they can stay at the top and they can stay rich. The Japanese imperialists wanted to beat down Korea, beat down China, beat down the Philippines, right? Beat down Okinawa so they could stay at the top of the pyramid. It's pretty basic, right? People tend to believe things that are in their economic interest. Upton Sinclair said it's very hard to convince a man of something if his salary depends on him not being convinced of it. And what I see from all these different from the woke people and from various trends, there's always an attempt to just avoid the basic facts, right? Why is there a prison industrial complex? Well, there's these private corporations who get paid to lock people up, and it's in their economic interest. Why was there enslavement of African people? Well, when you enslave people, you get their free labor. You don't have to pay them, and you can use them to make money, and you don't even have to pay them a wage. Like there's always some attempt to make it about something else, right? To make it about, oh, these people didn't read enough Judith Butler. Oh, these people haven't gotten religion. Oh, it's like, no, when it really gets down to it, we're talking about the economic base of society and the relations that flow from that economic base. We have a system of production organized for profit. And because of that, the people who own the means of production, the people who own the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power, they operate them in order to maximize profits for themselves. And in order to maximize profits, they want to stay at the center of the world economy. They want to beat down their competitors, right? They want to pay the worker as little as they possibly can to produce as many products as possible. This is all rooted in the basic economic interest, right? I mean, this is just very, very basic. And there's this desperate desire to make it not about that, to make it a moralistic thing. Well, no, there's good people and bad people. No, if you just buy my book, if we just get enough people to repeat my phrases and echo my philosophy, it'll all change. No, it is rooted in the economic foundations of society. And there's a desperate need to change the way the economy is organized so that profits are no longer in command and we can rationally organize our economy and have unlimited economic growth. And there's such a desperate desire on the part of so many different forms of opportunism to say that's not what the issue is. No. It's ideas. People are racist. People are sexist. People have the oligarchical view of mankind. People are not Christian. People are not Muslim. People are not Buddhist. No, it's rooted in the economic foundations of society. If you have a society that rewards bad behavior, people will be bad. Some people will be good. But if you have a society where the way people get rewarded is for doing bad things, people will tend to do bad things. However, if we can organize a society in a way where people get rewarded for doing good things, people are much more likely to do good things, right? And this is the basic, I mean, it's really, really basic. Right? I mean, prisons for profit. What's that about? It's about people who own those private prisons making profit. That's what it's about. Military industrial complex. What is that about? It's about military corporations making profits, right? Imperialism. What is it about? It's about destroying the independent economies that are emerging, maintaining a monopoly for Western corporations. It's pretty basic. People acting in their economic interest, justifying their behavior. It's pretty basic. And there's this desperation to avoid what is right in front of your face. I think Funky in the chat, she said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Just call it what it is.
Which is based on ruthless exploitation of masses of people and is driven by bitter competition between capitalist exploiters and intense rivalry between capitalist imperialist countries, whether those capitalist imperialists are European or Asian or any other identity. Any system that is based on exploitation will also have as one of its main features brutal male supremacy, along with other oppressive relations. And the motivation of the soldiers of such a system will involve the prospect and the right to the sexual conquest and plunder of women, something which has certainly been true of the American military throughout its history. To finally put an end to all this terrible oppression everywhere, it is necessary to move beyond all systems founded on exploitation. It is necessary to overthrow the system of capitalism, imperialism, and abolish and uproot relations of exploitation and oppression everywhere. That is the real solution to the real fundamental problem with which human beings everywhere are now confronted.
Now, I will point out, however, that I think Bob is partially to blame for the problem, because he's spent in his autobiography and his organization, they brag about how they broke with economism. They don't teach Marxist economics. If you look at the Revolutionary Communist Party, you read Bob Avakian's Basics, and I have a whole critique of Bob Avakian that I've published called Letter to Bob Avakian. It's actually, honestly, of all the books I have written, I feel like it is the best one. And it is the most educational. And it doesn't have a big audience, to tell you the truth. I mean, I know that there are, there are people who follow his work, but I feel like that book has so much in it about Marxism and what Marxism actually is, as opposed to the synthetic left, as opposed to the woke distortion. I wrote this book, still won't show images on the screen, will it? Well, I wrote my book, Letter to Bob Avakian. I wish I had a copy right here I could just hold up. But I wrote my book, Letter to Bob Avakian. I think it is of all the books I have written, it is probably the one, and it's short, and it will give you just a basic introduction to what this man believes and why it is contrary to Marxism. And in that book, I go to great length to show that he has largely abandoned Marxist economics, right? And that as much as he's clearly infuriated by wokeism, he repeats a lot of woke beliefs and woke talking points in his rhetoric, as much as he does that. And he is obsessively anti-Christian and atheistic, and that doesn't help. And I critique the new honestly, I feel like, the polemic, there's a reason that polemics are so educational, right? Because Bob Avakian, he tells the story, and I quote it in the book. He tells the story in his autobiography of a time when he went to a Jimmy Buffett concert and he saw all these teenage kids getting high, and it was edgy. It was so edgy that they were getting high. And that's when he discovered that they shouldn't make a class economic appeal. They shouldn't appeal to people's class struggle interests. They should just appeal to rebellious feelings among the youth. He's to blame for this, right? He and his attack on what he calls economism, which is a complete distortion of Lenin's understanding of economism. But in the name of opposing economism, his group, if you read their literature, if you read basics, if you read the RCP and their literature, it's all just the system is bad, police brutality happens, wars happen, so we're going to take over, and with guns in our hands, we're going to make it better. There is no understanding of the tendency of the falling rate of profit. There's no understanding of the built-in problems of capitalism, labor replacing technology, the road to an economic crisis. He doesn't even really explain the economics of imperialism very well. It's just kind of the government is oppressive, the state is oppressive, so we're going to become the new state and we're going to be good. And that understanding, that shallow understanding of Marxism, where the focus is not on building a movement of the immense majority to seize control of the means of production. Rather, the focus is on just kind of being outraged about the state and outraged about racism and sexism and promising that if you take over, you'll make it better by watering down and getting rid of the basic economics of Marxism. He has created a situation where this toxic woke shit can come to the surface, right? He's not teaching Marxist economics, right? And that is what we are doing at the Center for Political Innovation. We are teaching Marxist economics. The problem is this. In systems of the past, people were homeless because there weren't enough houses. But only under this system can people become homeless because there are too many houses. In systems of the past, people were hungry because there wasn't enough food. But only under this system are people hungry because there is too much food. Capitalism has created a situation where, in order to keep the price of dairy high enough to prevent the farm system from collapsing, the U.S. government purchases billions of dollars worth of cheese and buries it in a cave in Springfield, Missouri. The capitalist system is the only system in history where technological advancements lead to poverty. Self-driving cars should be a great thing, and they would be under any other system. But in capitalism, self-driving cars lead to riots in the streets, mass hunger, millions of truck drivers, millions of Uber drivers, millions of cab drivers, millions of state highway patrolmen, millions of traffic court employees out of work. It doesn't make sense. Capitalism is the only system where, when human productivity increases and the power of human labor is expanded, the result is poverty. That is not rational. That is not rational. And this is something that Marx wrote about. Poverty amid plenty. Poverty created by abundance. A crisis, Marx writes about in the Communist Manifesto, that in any other epoch would have seemed an absurdity. A crisis of overproduction. A crisis where the systems of commerce and the systems of production come to a halt because there is too much production and too much commerce, right? This is not rational. And the only way out of it is to have the banks and the factories and the centers of economic power organized to serve public good and not the profits of a wealthy few. And if we can have a rationally organized economy where profit is not in command, but rather we organize the economy rationally, the result can be a huge expansion in economic growth. And as technology expands, living standards can get better. Society becomes more prosperous. As technology becomes more prosperous, human labor increases its ability. And the result is more and more abundance, leading toward a world with so much wealth and so much abundance that the very need for a state can fade away. The very need for oppressive institutions fade away. A society without inequality, because there's enough to go around for everybody. That why would anyone hoard, right? Right? And this is Marxism. The understanding that we can overcome the narrow horizon of bourgeois right, and that we can get beyond the artificial restraints on human progress and human creativity that come from having an economy based on profits, right? If you want to read go read The Parable of the Water Tank. Edward Bellamy, whose cousin wrote the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance, Francis Bellamy, he wrote a short story explaining the problems of capitalism, the problem of overproduction, a crisis of poverty created by abundance. It's a beautiful fable or allegory called The Parable of the Water Tank. If you've got the time, go and read The Parable of the Water Tank. We included it in our book, We Are City Builders, and the educational manual of the CPI. It is a really, really important text explaining the basis of capitalism, the basis of the capitalist economy, and why it has economic problems. This is the first textbook we put out, the educational manual of the Center for Political Innovation, right? We put on page 120, we reprinted this classic American socialist fable, The Parable of the Water Tank. Go and read The Parable of the Water Tank. You will understand, because now there is so many people saying that the problem with capitalism is that it produces too much. No, production is not bad. Wealth is not bad. The problem is that when they produce more, the result is everyone getting poorer, and that doesn't make any sense. People say the problem with capitalism is it just wants to grow and grow and grow, and growth is bad. No, growth is not bad. But under capitalism, growth leads to poverty, and you have an economic crisis. You have the problem of glut, right? And it holds back human creativity. And the more growth you have, the poorer people get, and that doesn't make any sense. And Edward Bellamy, in his Parable of the Water Tank, he explains it. And there's many, many examples of this. This is Marxist economics. And imperialism is rooted in this same problem. Imperialism is an attempt to resolve a crisis of overproduction by seizing sections of the planet and using them to dump your excess products on, right? And you have more products than you have workers able to buy them back. So you go and invade a country and make them your captive market, and then they have to buy the products from you, right? And that's very much what it's about. It's about keeping countries from developing their own industries, keeping countries from utilizing their own natural resources and building themselves up, and keeping them as captive client states to purchase the excess commodities that you're producing that your population doesn't have the labor power to buy, right? Imperialism is rooted in capitalism, and it is capitalism holding back development around the world to maintain a monopoly for huge corporations. That is the problem. This is Marxist economics. And the problems of colonialism and imperialism, and the problems of violence against women or racial discrimination and all of this is rooted in the economic foundations of society. And there are a million charlatans out there nowadays that want to tell you it's rooted in some idea that if we just smack people in the face and tell them to think differently, things will change. No, right? The only way this is going to change is if the majority of society forces the economy to work in the interest of all. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. And the reason that China keeps rising is because they have an economy where profits are not in command. The Chinese Communist Party is. They have an economy where public good and the overall vision of the Chinese state and their 5-year economic plan dictates production, not the profits of a wealthy few. And they have a very big market sector, and a lot of people make a lot of money. But at the end of the day, the Communist Party forces the economy to do what is in the interest of the country overall. And that's how 900, 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty. And that's why China is going around the world building high-speed railway and infrastructure. That's why they've got the fastest trains in the world. It's because they have rationally organized their economy. It's not an idea that they have in their head, right? And I wanted to show that video from Avakian. I criticize him because if you read his publications and if you look at his publications, you don't get this understanding, right? I wrote this book, Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. I talk about it in here. I talk about it in our various textbooks. It is a fundamental thing, right? Capitalism undermines its own ability to grow. It has this built-in problem that the worker is never able to buy back the product that he produces. I cannot repeat this enough. It is something that we just need to understand. Capitalism is holding back human progress and growth with a built-in problem called overproduction, value crisis, the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, right? And that is the basis of the economic crisis. I will quickly show you a great video that Peter Coffin made of me explaining this. I'll show it again because it's just so important. And then I've got another thing I want to react to from our good friend David Rovix. But I just cannot, I cannot emphasize this enough because this is the root of the problem. Explain what needs to be explained, what used to be considered Marxism 101, about why it is that our Western capitalist economy is crashing and burning. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do some math. And I hate math. Do you know why I hate math? Because I grew up in America. I went to public school in the United States of America. So I am going to, at risk of embarrassing myself, because math was never my best subject, I'm going to do some mathematics here on the board for you to explain the problem.
I very much enjoyed Caleb's speech.
So if you are creating a product, right? If you're a factory owner, you're making a product, you are going to need the material through which that product is made, the manufacturing materials. So that'll be A.
The simple equation you put forward to explain the crisis of overproduction and the falling rate of profit.
And you're probably going to need to transport the product to where it's sold. That's B.
It broke down where your money goes.
You're also going to have to pay your labor costs. Labor costs are represented by C.
Explanations of those concepts that people are able to understand.
Then when consumers purchase the product, they're going to pay a final price. And that final price is D. However, there's a problem with that.
I like the fact that he framed it that way to make it very clear.
Which is that the capitalist can't change how much A costs. He can't change how much B costs. So the profit of the capitalist can only be extracted from the value put into it by the worker. And this is the basis of Marxism, the understanding of surplus value.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere. I've never been able to explain it that simply.
So C, the labor value, is divided. You have C1, which is what the worker actually gets paid. And then you have C2, which is the profit that the capitalist makes. And it all adds up to D, which is the final cost of the product. Now, the way people in the United States who talk about Marxism generally talk about this is they say, well, this is unfair. They say the worker is not getting paid the full value of his labor. But they're missing one of the most important points, which is not just that it's unfair and then people argue, well, what about the employer? He put up the money, doesn't he deserve to be? That's all a distraction. Because the important thing to understand is this. C1 is always going to be less than D. The wages paid out to the worker are never enough to buy back the product that he produces. There is always more products created than there are wages paid out to the worker. And this is the built-in problem of capitalism, the problem of overproduction. And it is always there in the capitalist economy. It never goes away. And they have invented all kinds of crazy mechanisms to try and deal with the problem of overproduction. Part of the reason that the US government has purchased billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese only to bury it in a cave in Springfield, Missouri, is to deal with this problem. It is an ongoing present problem, and it's a problem acknowledged by most capitalist economists. John Maynard Keynes said the problem was underconsumption rather than overproduction, but he was pointing to the same problem. The military-industrial complex in the United States is an effort to deal with this problem, to keep spending going. There's all kinds of mechanisms that they've invented to try and resolve this problem, but it gets worse. What is the capitalist always trying to do? He wants to maximize the amount of profit he makes. And one of the main ways they do that is with what's called labor-saving technology. Get rid of workers and replace workers with machines. As they eliminate workers from the process of production, as there's fewer and fewer workers involved, as machines take the place of workers, the role of C in production decreases. There's a little bit of a problem with that. As C goes down, C2 also goes down, right? As C decreases, C2 also decreases. And as the role of the worker in production is reduced, the rate of profit that the capitalist makes goes down. And this is called the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Only human labor creates value. And this is something that Adam Smith acknowledged. This is something some of the popes even acknowledge. Human labor creates all value. And so when you reduce the role of human labor in production, the amount of value created decreases, and the ability of the capitalist to extract surplus value also decreases. So this causes the capitalist to have to churn out even more products because he's making less and less of a profit on the overall product. He's making less and less of a percentage, so he has to churn them out. So this problem of the worker never being able to buy back what he produces and more products being created than are necessary, this problem becomes exacerbated. And this points to what is understood to be the deeply irrational nature of the capitalist system. All right. So I cannot repeat these concepts enough, and maybe they get old, and maybe I use the same analogies. If you can think of a better way of explaining it, please do so. But we need people to understand that the problems are rooted in the economic base. So now I also want to react to, I love David Rovics. David Rovics is a great musician. I was listening to David Rovics for years. I never thought in a million years I would be talking to David Rovics. I always assumed that he was just this great musician I would never hear from. When I went to Iran the first time, I had his song about John Brown on repeat on my laptop, and I've his song about the St. Patrick's Battalion. I've loved David Rovics for a long time. And David Rovics and I have become friends, and he's played at CPI events because we've both been canceled in the same way. He may be an anarchist, and I may be a 21st century socialist, a socialist with American and Christian characteristics, or a communist in the sense that countries around the world that are rising from poverty are, not in the woke Western way. And he may be an anarchist, but we're both sincere. We're both sincere anti-imperialists. We're both sincere opponents of police state repression. And we've both been canceled. We've both been lied about and smeared and had an attempt to just drive us out of any space where people are talking about progressive politics. And David Rovics, he gave this kind of eloquent essay about it, and I wanted to show it here on the stream.
Fear and suspicion in the Northwest. You can find this missive in both written and podcast forms on Substack, on Patreon, and at davidrovics.com/thisweek. I read in the news this morning a study that finds that 50% of interactions on the internet involve bots. The article on Al Jazeera's website was particularly focused on the role of the pro-Israel bot factories they're monitoring. They found that early in the ongoing Gaza genocide, posts on social media worldwide were overwhelmingly sympathetic to the Palestinians. Then that changed due to armies of bots being unleashed, as it turns out.
50%. Did you hear that? 50% of what you see on the internet are bots. 50%. 50% of retweets. 50% of YouTube views. 50% of share. It's fake. The internet is fake. It's not real. There are people with lots of money and troll farms who decide what goes viral and what doesn't. The internet is fake. It's fake. Right? And we know this now. It's not new. We kind of always knew this. But the internet is fake. It's not real. Get it through your heads. It's not real. It is not real. And this essay gets way better than this. But that's like the first thing I want you to understand. And I'm here on the internet saying this, so maybe I'm a hypocrite. But I know there are real people watching me right now, but I'm trying to tell you that what is popular online and what people believe online isn't real. Certain opinions get amplified, certain opinions get suppressed, certain ideas get promoted, certain ideas get suppressed. There's an attempt to manage dissident spaces. I talked about that with Dr. Shiva this afternoon. He's a little bit more bitter than I try to be. I try to focus on the positive. But I just want to shake all of you right now and say the internet is not real. The internet is not real.
At the beginning of this month, Facebook commended me for having as much engagement as celebrities I follow on the platform, such as Tom Morello and Joan Baez. I got 27,000 comments in the past 28 days, the Meta bot congratulated me. It was abundantly evident to any casual observer of my Facebook page that at least 95% of those comments were from pro-Israel accounts that had recently been set up. I had wondered how many trolls for hire Mossad was paying in some corner of the world where people were desperate enough to do such work. But apparently these days, most of the accounts openly advocating for the mass murder of children, the razing of Gaza, and the non-existence of Palestine are bots. Which means that all those accounts actively arguing with these bots, among the majority of them, which I suspect are real humans, are really truly wasting their time. Although my Facebook account and sometimes my X/Twitter account are frequently flooded with such Hasbara bot bile, to me and other people I actually know who are also prone to seeing my posts, the flood of blatantly pro-genocide hatred that follows any photo I post that includes words like Gaza or Palestine are easy enough to dismiss, though of course quite intentionally bewildering. What has much more potential destructive power are the trolling activities of those who consider themselves on the anti-fascist side. There is a certain cohort of self-proclaimed anti-fascists who spend much of their time posting on social media and writing articles that involve efforts at character assassination of ostensibly fellow leftists who have strayed from their convoluted version of anti-fascism. Once such character assassination has been carried out, along with regular, well-timed reminders of the supposed transgressions of the target, then the modern culture of fear and suspicion that has been cultivated by social media algorithms and other factors takes over.
And he is so right about this, right? They pick people, right? And, they've picked me, they've picked David Rovics, they've picked various other people, and they just decide that you're bad. And they go out of their way to reinterpret everything you do to make you bad. And you're not even somebody that really disagrees with them on very much, but they decide you're bad and they just blast it all over social media that you're bad, right? And all kinds of people get scared because you're bad. And they, if they talk to you or if they don't condemn you, then people might think they're bad too. And they're trying to please people that aren't real. They're trying to please a bunch of bots. They're trying to please a bunch of people on social media who are not real.
Is the suspicion of others resulting from the fear of association. In the modern culture of the online American left and the slippery slope beyond, association with a tainted person taints you, and you are then guilty by association. We must avoid being burdened by the need to constantly fend off accusations. We've seen this happen to so many others, and we don't want it to happen to us. Therefore, we avoid associating with those who are under suspicion. The power of false rumors has never been greater in the entire history of humanity, I'm pretty sure. Those spreading the rumors don't even need to identify themselves or say why they feel unsafe. They need only make the accusation anonymously online, and it must be believed, or else the unbelievers may be tainted by their unbelief and accused of all the same transgressions as the one they are possibly about to be guilty of associating with.
Again, I have seen this so many times. People who won't even show their face, who won't even say their name, accuse people of things, and in some cases, they don't even really have much of an allegation. There's not much there. But then the bots take it and they turn it into things that it absolutely isn't. And they blow it completely out of proportion. And people are afraid to talk to you. People are afraid to speak to you. People that you had a bond with won't talk to you because oh no, I saw something on the internet, and they don't even know if it's true. They don't even know what it is. In a lot of cases, they don't even know what you're accused of. They don't know what the basis of the accusation is. They don't even understand it. They just know you're bad. That well, on the internet they said that Joe Bob is bad. So if I'm friendly with Joe Bob, somebody might notice, and one of these bots and trolls might come after. It's frustrating. And David Rovix has been subjected to it, and I've been subjected to it, and it is a very, very evil thing that they do, right? Where they just target somebody, and facts don't matter. Facts don't matter. Details don't matter. The first major, one of the biggest things they went after me for was that I met with Alexander Dugin. I did, and I would do it again. And I met his daughter, and I considered his daughter a friend, and I met him on one occasion, and I would do it again. I see nothing wrong with meeting with Alexander Dugin. But all over the internet, all kinds of people who had never heard of Alexander Dugin, never once heard of the man, right? They didn't know who Dugin was. They didn't know who Dugin was. They didn't know what Dugin was. They didn't know anything about Russian politics. But they heard that I talked to somebody in Russia, and suddenly I was a bad person. And I was just untouchable, and I was evil because I met with somebody in Russia who they had never heard of. They didn't know anything about it. And no matter how many times I explained over and over and over again that Dugin is not a Nazi, that Dugin is an important Russian conservative thinker who's very well respected in the anti-imperialist countries like China and People's Korea and in Venezuela and various places, no matter how many times I explained that, there would always be people who'd come to me and say, well, if you would just address this Dugin thing, right? I'm telling you, right? This is how it works. And all these people that have never heard of Alexander Dugin, all these people know nothing about it. They just know, well, Caleb talked to some guy and that makes him a bad person. And none of these people bothered to investigate. And none of these people even really cared what I had to say about the matter because they weren't really concerned with the truth. They were concerned with the fact that if they stood by me or they remained my friend or they didn't completely excommunicate me, they might get in trouble themselves. That's all they cared about. They didn't care about the truth. And keep in mind, at least 50%, probably more, of the people that they were trying to get approval from were not real. Put that in your mind. 50% of the mob that these people are afraid of, at least, and in my case and in his case, it's probably way more than 50%, are not even real people. You are cutting off a real person. You are making a real person a pariah because you're scared of what a bunch of fake internet robots might think of you. This is the society we live in.
Thus, Rose City Antifa cult guru Shane Burley posted a video shot of me surreptitiously and from a safe distance from behind me as I was busking near the library at Portland State University while it was occupied by protesters. David Rovix seems to think the world just loves him as much as he loves himself. He posted, attempting to mock the notion that I was having an album release party on the sidewalk with an audience of disinterested passersby, as I had joked I was doing.
Yeah, and that's classic, right? I don't know who this Shane guy is, but that's what Shane is mad about. He's mad about the notion that David is happy, right? Because David, apparently, David was playing some music on the side of the street near a Palestine rally. And so he takes a picture and is just like, he likes himself so much. And that's what they always do. And I've noticed the real people behind this cancel culture stuff, they are jealous bastards when it really gets down to it. They are the most unhappy people you will ever meet. They're what you call anti-fans, where, it's really unhealthy. It can be, right? I mean, we can all be fans. I'm a fan of William Z. Foster. I'm a fan of David Rovix. There's healthy fandoms out there, but it can be unhealthy, right? If you become so obsessed with Taylor Swift that you mortgage your house to go to a Taylor Swift concert, or you quit a job because your boss disrespected Taylor Swift, you got a problem. Fandoms where you love somebody can be unhealthy. But if you think a fandom where you like somebody is unhealthy, an anti-fandom is really fucking unhealthy. And it is a mental illness that social media exacerbates to the 10th degree. You don't want to be an anti-fan, right? Where you don't like somebody, usually it's rooted in jealousy. They're jealous of the person, right? In this case, they're clearly jealous of the fact that David is happy. God forbid David be happy, right? God forbid David be proud of the music that he plays, right? But this Shane guy, whoever he is, right? He clearly, I mean, he just revealed himself right there. He makes a post. David thinks everyone likes him as much as he likes himself. Well, shouldn't people like themselves? You know, I mean, generally, people who like themselves don't become mass shooters. They don't become drug addicts. They don't commit suicide. They don't abuse their children. They don't, you know, generally, people who like themselves tend to be better people in society. But this Shane guy clearly doesn't like himself. He clearly doesn't like himself. And so he makes a post that David Rovix likes himself. And I see the same thing directed toward me. There's a million posts by these people. That Caleb, he thinks he's smart. He likes himself. I can't. And they just sit there seething, right? That I'm out there existing, right? And it just, and they're in this mindset where these people, like, you know, they annoy me. They annoy me, sure. But I'm 1,000 times healthier than they are, because if I'm listening to somebody on YouTube, it's because I like them, right? But there are probably 5 or 6 of them watching right now who are watching this because they don't like me. And they're sitting there going, I'm going to get Caleb. And it's like, you need help. Anti-fandom is a really bad place psychologically, right? If you are compelled to torture yourself like that, to the point that you cyber stalk somebody and you just seethe and you follow everything they do to try and figure out and post about it and I mean, you're a really unhealthy person, right? And you know, and that there are people like this that literally they follow David, they follow me, and everything we do, right? They make a post to try and like spin it in a different way. You know, they do something, you know, to try and make it look evil or you know, Nazi or pedophile or whatever. And these people are really, really unwell, right? I mean, you want to talk about, like, this is the mindset of a mass shooter. This is the mindset of somebody, right? You know, yeah. So this is interesting. Nate says 205 people watching right now. 2% are haters. There's probably 4 people watching this right now who are sitting there waiting for anything I say that they can take out of context and make me into a Nazi pedophile rapist, whatever, right? I mean, it's like, such people are really, really unhealthy, right? I mean, watch someone you like, find a musician you like, find a writer you like, listen to somebody you like. But if you feel compelled to watch somebody you don't like, I mean, that's beyond me. And it's like the Shane guy, when he posts this about David, he's basically just revealing he's jealous of the fact that David has happiness in his life. And and that's what so much of wokeness is. They're not only are they unhappy, not only do they not like themselves and feel compelled to prove to everyone how good they are, but on top of that, to top it all off, if they see someone who's happy, if they see someone who's confident, they have to bring them down. They have to destroy them because, right? And that is, you want to talk about toxicity, right? You want to talk about, I mean, it's frightening, right? It is frightening, right? That people that feel this compulsion to be an anti-fan, right? That is really, really dangerous. You know, I don't like Kamala Harris, and writing about her and talking about her has been good for me. I wrote a book. I've analyzed her a little bit, but I don't watch every Kamala Harris speech. I don't even subscribe to her YouTube channel. I'll occasionally comment if there's a little news item here or there because it's entertaining, because I know a lot about Kamala Harris. I can comment on her in ways that I don't, but I don't generally like Kamala Harris. So I make a point of not listening to Kamala Harris. But there are people that get into this anti-fandom mindset where their identity is based on hating somebody on the internet, hating somebody through the internet. And that is, you don't want to be in that place, my friend. You don't want to be there.
I am guilty of loving myself and thinking the world loves me because I play music in front of audiences on occasion, I guess. Shane employs the same type of condescension in his posts as the Hasbro trolls do, and as all the trolls do, in an effort to toxify the target of their condescension. He developed his interest in destroying my career when I violated the rules of his anti-fascist principles by communicating with the wrong person. By committing the crime of communication with the wrong person, I am now that person's advocate, supporter, buddy, and collaborator, and should thus be shunned as the person I associated with was also being shunned. For other reasons, the same reasons, it doesn't matter. Shun them all to be safest. Spotify doesn't allow comments, and thus trolling on the platform is pretty much impossible. As a result, this very popular platform works very well for introducing people to music they'll be likely to like once the algorithm has a good idea of what kind of music they're into. This is how I get a significant percentage of my new fans on the platform. Most of them are young, and most of them are sympathetic to the Palestinians and responding very well to my recent albums. People are streaming over 100,000 of my songs on Spotify each month.
Everybody loves David Rovics. I mean, David Rovics is amazingly skilled at what he does. His song for the Houthi army has been translated into Arabic, and they are listening to it, and they're honored by it in Yemen. And we even featured a picture of David Rovics in our recent book about the Houthis, right? Because he's so beloved, he's so important, right? We featured, there he is, right? David Rovics, anyone who listens to his stuff, they love him. Right. And yet there are some people that are just, off their rocker. And it's, well, no, he talked to so-and-so. And it's like, he's sincere. He's sincere. Because the only people who don't get canceled are frauds. Right. The way you can tell that someone is legitimately anti-imperialist, do they get canceled? Then they're legit. Right. I'm just telling you, the people who don't get canceled are not legit. And the people who do get canceled are legit. Because I've noticed there are certain people that just never get canceled. They just no matter what they do, no matter what they say, they're fine. And that is very suspicious. And the reason David and I are close, we may come from different philosophies, different schools, and all of that, but we're both sincere. We're both anti-imperialist. And not a shocker, we've both been canceled.
It's when they move onto other platforms where anyone can post and comment, where they may learn about my many scarlet letters. Between the time a fan from Spotify organized an appearance on the campus in Eugene and the time I arrived in Eugene, someone let someone else know that this guest is tainted by association with the wrong person, and associating with him may taint us too, regardless of the veracity of any of the allegations. Best be safe. The truth doesn't matter anyway. Being tainted means being rendered ineffective, and this work is too important. Safest to shun, to isolate, to divide, to be as pure as possible, and thus hopefully avoid our own cancellation.
And it doesn't work that way. You will never please these people. And he's pointing to this mindset of, oh, well, if we just don't associate with these people, we just don't talk to these people. Bullshit. Bullshit. It doesn't work. You will never please this crowd. The only way you will ever please the cancel culture crowd is to stop being an anti-imperialist. Just stop being an anti-imperialist. Stop speaking up for real causes. Stop standing out. Stop taking tough stances. That's the only way you'll ever please them, right? Is really just to stop existing, right? I mean, they're mad at David for being popular, for liking himself. They took a video. Oh, he likes himself, right? The only way that you will ever please these people is if you just stop existing, right? And one thing that I find infuriating, I must say, right, is that there's a crowd of people who have it in their head that if they just disassociate from people, they can say the same kind of things I say and do the same kind of work I do and not get canceled. And it doesn't work. And they get canceled over and over and over again, and guilt by association, and they still get accused of secretly working with me. They still get accused of being in a cabal with me and all of that. And they just can't get it through their heads. They just can't get it through their thick skulls that, oh, denouncing me, keeping a distance from me, disavowing me doesn't help them in any way. Right. And it infuriates me, the people that try to play this game of like, oh, well, don't worry, I'm not like so-and-so. I remember someone tried to pull that crap with me once, just once. Someone tried to pull that crap, and I caught on very early. There is no pleasing internet cancel culture. There is no pleasing it. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, There's always some reason. It's honestly, it's a lot like what I was talking about earlier on the stream about the jail. About the crowds mourning the Iranian president, right? They lie and say that there's no crowds of people and that the whole country is not mourning Raisi. They clearly are. And then they go back to the drawing board and they come up with another lie, right? And that's how the cancel culture crowd is. None of them ever go, oh, I was wrong. Never happens. Never happens. None of them ever go, oh, you denounced David Rovix. Oh, you denounced Caleb. Oh, we'll leave you alone now. Never happens, right? And the people, I will say, the pathetic people, and there are certain people that are better than others, but there are certain people that just can't figure that out. And they are so pathetic. Oh, I don't want to. No, I only talked to David Rowick once. I'll never do it again. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I only talk. And it's so pathetic. They're still going to come after you. They don't care that you talk to me. They don't care that you talk to David Rovix. They care that you defend China. They care that you defend the Palestinians. They care that you exist and you're popular. That's what they care about. And as long as you continue to take anti-imperialist stances, and as long as you exist and maintain some popularity, they're going to keep making up reasons that you're bad. And you going, oh, I'm so sorry for talking to this person. It doesn't fucking help, right? All it does is encourage them because it shows them that they have the ability to influence your behavior. That's what it shows them. It shows them that you have the ability, that they have the ability to get you to do shit, to get you to denounce people, to get you to go things. And that encourages them, right? And so I really do. There's a lot of people who I do want to slap because it's never occurred to them that the cancel culture mob doesn't go away when you join them in attacking other people or you distance yourself from the people they tell you to distance themselves from. It does not help. It doesn't help. It doesn't make things better. It doesn't, they don't stop. And it actually emboldens them, right? And there are some very, very pathetic people out there that just cannot get that through their skulls.
Last week, I got a message from someone in Portland with an anonymous account on Signal who wanted to talk about eviction resistance. Great, I thought. I've been working on cultivating an eviction defense network in my spare time for years, and I've made a bit of progress too. I welcome people who are working on similar projects and want to work together. This person asked me if I wanted to join the Signal group with other people involved with similar projects. Of course, I replied. It only took a few hours before I mentioned my admiration for Portland Tenants United founder Margot Black, and I found myself unceremoniously removed from the Signal group. Margot, you see, is tainted by the ridiculous accusations made about her by a very discredited former activist. Although it was obvious to anyone who looked into it that the allegations were ridiculous, Margot can no longer effectively organize in the city of Portland, along with some other of her colleagues at PTU who were similarly smeared. The need for others in the left milieu to avoid being smeared themselves by associating with Margot meant they had to shun her, and so many others. Even mentioning her name in a positive light today will get you immediately kicked out of a Signal group by people who themselves openly admit to me that they haven't looked into the accusations against Margot. It's all before their time, they say, but they trust their colleagues who believe the accusations to be true.
Yeah, I've seen this so frequently, right? They don't even know what the allegations are. They don't even, I have seen this and they do it to anybody who takes a stance. They do it to them.
Their colleagues, in this case, may be anonymous accounts on Signal, but that's good enough. Victims don't need to reveal their identities or say why they feel unsafe. That's against the new rules of communication that seem to have been written by COINTELPRO. Last weekend, I played 3 gigs in different parts of the Northwest outside of Portland. This weekend, the Northwest Tour continues with a Sing Out for Gaza and a concert in downtown Portland. I managed to catch up with a bunch of different friends in various places on my little trip. I was in Vancouver, BC on Saturday. Among the folks I visited was longtime internationally traveling journalist and brilliant singer as well of proud Lebanese heritage Hadani Ditmars. She had just recently written about a jarring experience where she visited the pro-Palestine encampment at the University of British Columbia, and after an hour of talking with various folks there, she was escorted off of the campus by masked, self-appointed encampment security people who claimed with no basis that she was a Zionist. I visited an old friend in Seattle who has started a line of coffee she's calling anti-fascist coffee. The coffee is fantastic. In her efforts to spread the word about it on social media, she has found herself getting attacked by a handful of accounts that are saying all kinds of snarky and nasty things, denouncing her line of coffee for one reason or another. She did what I did in identical circumstances and asked someone with far greater IT skills than either of us have if they could tell us about these people posting this nonsense. As with my attackers, she found all these accounts had Portland, Oregon IP addresses. On Sunday in Seattle, before heading to Olympia, I looked online to discover my old friend John Bain, a.k.a. Attila the Stockbroker, responding to people claiming to be from Anti-Fascist Action who were attacking him very publicly and in a profoundly uncomradely fashion for having the wrong position on Israel-Palestine. John and I have done 14 tours together, and we've spent a significant minority of our time on those tours arguing about politics. We're both well-read and well-traveled leftist musicians, but we have had various spicy political differences that have made for lots of good arguments about lots of subjects, one of them being the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state. He's for it, I'm against. This has never stopped us from touring together, and has never led either of us to feel the need to publicly denounce the other for having a different perspective, even at a time like this.
And this is interesting, right? Because occasionally you will meet people like this, and they exist. People who are very opposed to what Israel does, but just have this Israel has the right to exist bug up their ass. I shouldn't put it in such crude terms, but they exist, right? That they oppose Israel's crimes. They want rights for the Palestinians. They want a Palestinian state. They want the USA to stop funding Israel. But they just have it in their mind, no, Israel must exist, right? And I disagree with those people, but I've pointed out many times that me disagreeing with them does not, really matter, right? Because at the end of the day, Israel isn't just going to go away. And so I am for a one-state solution. I am not in favor of any state that is for one race, that is based on the supremacy of one race or ethnic group. I'm not for a settler colonial state. I'm not for apartheid in South Africa. I'm not for Rhodesia and the Rhodesia settler regime, and I'm not for the Dutch East Indies, and I'm not for Israel. But at the end of the day, I want the Palestinians to get a better situation. So I will disagree with these people, but I don't find that this is like something that I need to like denounce and disavow, and there doesn't need to be blood in the streets over this issue. Right? I feel like there is an area in which I can still cooperate with somebody. Now if someone is supporting what Israel's doing and bombing Gaza, etc., that's where obviously we have a big disagreement. But there are people that I have met that take, a soft Zionist position, but still are very vocal in opposing what Israel does. And I might disagree with those people, but I can work with them. And I think David is expressing roughly the same thing. That unfortunately there are some people that take this position on Israel, that are leftists, that are opposed to what Israel does. And we can disagree, but they don't deserve to have their heads chopped off, and they don't deserve to be run out of all left-wing spaces because they feel that way. And in fact, a lot of the Palestine movement at this point feels that way.
But now that an allegedly official representative of AFA has written all of this bile about John online, despite the thousands of people who have eloquently defended John on his Facebook page in light of these attacks, we can all be reasonably sure there will be more trolling of John based on the original allegations, because that's how it works with such public allegations and social media's bottom-feeding sensationalistic algorithms. John's attacker also made reference to his loving himself too much, apparently a common transgression for artists who habitually perform for audiences.
And that really, I've noticed that among the cancelers, it's always this person I perceive them as being happier than me, which they may not be. You don't know the person. I perceive them as being happier than me. I perceive them as being more successful than me. I perceive them as having a better life than me, which again, you don't know. You don't know what's going on. I perceive them as having a better life than me, and they have this flaw, which may be a real flaw or a real political disagreement or whatever. So I am going to broadcast that to the whole world to let the whole world know that it is so unfair that this person has happiness in their life or has something better because they have this flaw, right? And it sounds like, I mean, he's describing how the guy took the picture of him and said, oh, David likes himself, you know, and how this friend of his, it sounds like this friend of his who takes what I agree with David is not a good position on Israel, right? That Israel has the right to exist. But somebody who doesn't think that is resentful and jealous of the friend. And so they want to blast it to the whole world. You know, this person who's I perceive as having it better than me, this person that I perceive as having a better life than me has a flaw. And so that means they don't deserve it, right? Then this is where I really do think that you know, socialist politics should never be about jealousy, right? And and this is a big thing. Socialism is not about looking at a group of people who have lots of money and saying they have all this money and that's no fair, right? That's kindergarten stuff. Right? We are not looking at the ruling class and saying they have better lives than we do. They have more money than we have, and that's no fair, and we want to punish them. What we're upset about is the wealth that they have and the better lives that they have come at the expense of everyone else. That's what the issue is, right? The issue is that the way they get rich is by making everyone else poor. The way they maintain their monopoly is by beating down and destroying other countries, by waging wars, by locking people in prison. We're not mad about the wealth. We want everyone to have that much wealth or more. We're mad about how they got it by maintaining artificial scarcity. I like that. I've started hearing people use the phrase artificial scarcity lately, and I like it. I like it, you know, because that's the kind of society we live in. There's no reason for there to be scarcity in our society right now. There's the potential for great abundance, but because of the irrational profit system, because we don't have a rationally planned economy, there is artificial scarcity. And our anger at the ruling class is that it's not that they have, it's that they're preventing the rest of humanity from having. And what they have is based on other people not having, by keeping the rest of the world poor in order to make themselves rich. And that's a really, really important point. So continue, David.
In Olympia, the house concert happened in a beautiful backyard of an old friend there who has long ago been canceled himself for saying the wrong things, thinking the wrong thoughts, and posting them online. Some of the folks who did come to the show were nice enough to let me know that the reason why they didn't tell other people they knew about it was because of where it was taking place. Other folks who showed up had come from Centralia. The last time I played in Centralia, they were the organizers of the gig. When some self-proclaimed allegedly local anti-fascist heard they were having me play there, they tried to get the gig canceled based on my supposed transgressions, but the organizers couldn't figure out what my transgressions were supposed to have been, and so the gig went on, though perhaps with a smaller attendance than it might have otherwise had. There will be another one in Centralia soon, and in Olympia as well, not to mention Seattle and BC. But no doubt there will be those who try to get all of those gigs canceled, and try to make sure people who were thinking of going think otherwise, lest they be associated with one who has been associated with those who are accused of committing transgressions. Remember when Obama was running for office and the Republicans were trying to smear him for his associations with former members of the Weather Underground and all that? They called him a terrorist supporter. That's what the Hasbara trolls constantly call me too, because of my association with the Palestinian cause. but for daring to unapologetically interview a couple of allegedly right-wing guests on my YouTube channel, I'm denounced as an insidious member of the sneakily anti-Semitic supposed red-brown alliance that festers in the imaginations of the self-appointed gatekeepers of anti-fascism today. Kicking the heretics out of churches and then literally or symbolically burning them at the stake goes back a long way in this country. With this tradition being joined so actively by armies of right-wing bots, along with self-appointed anti-fascist cult gurus and their anonymous followers, all amplified to a staggering degree by conflict-feeding social media algorithms, it really is a clusterfuck. People say very often, in commenting on missives such as this one, that I must be doing something right to be getting all of this negative attention. I agree. But knowing this to be the case sure doesn't solve any of our collective problems here.
All right. Well, listen, folks, I just want to make one last comment because, you know, in our new textbook, we do talk about in chapter 3, this is our new textbook, Out of the Movement to the Masses. In chapter 3, I had to talk a lot about the Weather Underground, which I really didn't want to do. You know, when I was first getting interested in leftism, when I was like a teenager, I read Bill Ayers' autobiography and I watched the Weatherman documentary, the one that came out. You know, I think it was PBS or one of them made a documentary about the Weathermen and all that. But honestly, I find the Weathermen to be kind of sickening. They hated the working class of America. They were all from ultra wealthy families. They embraced the hippie counterculture and drug use, and they it was quite an abusive atmosphere. I mean, they were vicious to each other, according to all the accounts that I've read. But if you talk about the 70s New Communist Movement, the New Communist Movement in the 1970s was like a split from the Weathermen, right? So it started out, you had Students for a Democratic Society, SDS, and SDS was dominated by the Progressive Labor Party, and the people who opposed the Progressive Labor Party were called the Revolutionary Youth Movement. Now, the Progressive Labor Party was this big communist group in the 1970s, but or in the 1960s, but as the 1960s went on, they kind of backed away from supporting the Vietnamese. They said the Vietnamese, because they were negotiating with the USA, they were sellouts. They backed away from supporting the Black Panthers because they said the Black Panthers were black fascists or whatever, and that Progressive Labor Party, it cut off, it had opposed China, it opposed the Soviet Union, but then it cut off its relationship with China. And the Progressive Labor Party was increasingly becoming this very, very disconnected from the radical movement that existed. They didn't support the Black Panthers. They didn't support the Vietnamese. They didn't support China. They were becoming their own kind of thing. So the people in Students for a Democratic Society who did support the Black Panthers and did support the Vietnamese, they called themselves Revolutionary Youth Movement. And there were a lot of them. You know, some people say maybe as many as 2 million. Many people say it was much smaller, maybe 60,000. Big difference there. But, you know, I mean, it wasn't a huge number of people, but there were a lot of them. But there was a group of people at the top of the Revolutionary Youth Movement whose parents were all billionaires and millionaires and, you know, state senators. And I think Bill Ayers' father is the owner of the power company in Chicago, the state, you know, electricity company. And that, you know, they were like kind of the center of attention, and they quickly started turning the Revolutionary Youth Movement into this weird hippie counterculture group that engaged in property destruction, etc. And so Revolutionary Youth Movement 2 was the breakaway from that. And it was Bob Avakian, Mike Klonsky, Jerry Tung, a number of people that supported the Black Panthers, that supported the Vietnamese National Liberation Front, that supported China, but didn't want to be part of the Weatherman thing. They didn't want to be associated with the crazy group that the Weathermen became. And they didn't hate the American working class. And they actually listened to the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers told them to go organize their own people, that they should organize white workers to be anti-imperialist, to get jobs in factories, to engage their co-workers and their friends and families, neighborhoods of people that looked like them, and win those folks to be anti-imperialist. And they took that seriously. And that's the New Communist Movement. So the New Communist Movement was basically formed in opposition to the Weathermen. But if you read, and in the textbook in chapter 3, the Weathermen just kept showing up. because the Weathermen, I am convinced there was a section of the deep state that was promoting the Weathermen, and I don't know exactly why. And the fact that none of them ever went to prison. I mean, the fact that they all got plea deals, Mark Rudd, Bernadine Dorn. I mean, Bernadine Dorn did some prison time because she wouldn't testify. She got like contempt of a grand jury, but the rest of them, none of them did any prison time. And you know, it's very, very odd. And you look at the Weathermen, so much of the woke stuff is very, very much associated with them. The idea that white people are all privileged and reactionary, the idea, you know, kind of romanticizing Native Americans, wanting, you know, the land back thing, that like the Native Americans are somehow pure because they're not tainted by our Western civilization, and you know, romanticizing Native Americans, hating society overall, and then, you know, having, you know, the kind of, you know, the struggle sessions where they tear people down and make them confess to things, the cancel culture. The Weathermen, I mean, they were not a good group. They were not a good group. And one of the things that I find amusing about the Weathermen is apparently one of the Weathermen leaders, a guy named Jeff Jones, he gave a speech and he said, what we want to do is, he said, we want to appeal to the part of every kid that supported Lex Luthor and hates Superman. And I hear that, and I think that is so wrong, because Superman, he was the man of steel. Stalin. Superman fought the Ku Klux Klan during World War II. Superman's first comic was rescuing a group of striking workers. Superman, you know, he was a hero. He was the man of steel fighting for the working class. And who's Lex Luthor? Lex Luthor is an evil tech monopolist, a maniacally evil bald guy who's using technology to scheme against the people. He's a technocrat fascist, right? Lex Luthor is Jeff Bezos, right? That's who Lex Luthor is. Lex Luthor is Bill Gates. Lex Luthor is, you know, is the World Economic Forum. So I love Superman, and the Weathermen were very much about appealing to evil, right? They wanted to appeal to that satanic desire to rebel, that satanic desire. They were rich kids who were bad, right? And they wanted to be bad. They wanted to be outlaws. They wanted to be criminals. They wanted to be satanic. They wanted to break the rules and be edgy. They were appealing to the worst in people. And I guess that's a way I can tie this all together before we do the roll call and I answer people's questions. But the Weathermen wanted to appeal to the worst in people. They wanted to appeal to people's antisocial tendencies, their alienation from society, their resentment, their hate, their desire to destroy things. But we need to appeal to the best in people. That's what we need to appeal to. We need to appeal to people's love. To people's love, right? It's interesting. I think about my Christian upbringing, right? And there's one thing, it's in the Bible many times. It's not in the Bible many times. I think it's probably only in the Bible once, but it's quoted many times among Christians, right? And it's a thing that you hear. I heard this growing up in the church, and I didn't really think much of it. It's just something they say. But Jesus was asked, what are the two greatest commandments? And one is to love your God with all your heart and soul, right? And the other is to love your neighbor as yourself. And you think about that, you know, if you really think about that, to love your God, to connect with the universe, right? To be spiritual, to rise above your bodily instincts and your bodily desires, and to love, to embrace the spiritual power behind the universe, to rise out of your humanness, to love your God, right, with all your heart and soul, to really just connect to something that you can't see, to something that is all powerful, that is beyond you, and just really connect yourself to that. And then the second one is to love your neighbor as yourself, to really care and have empathy for another person, to never be indifferent to another person's suffering, to think about how the other person is feeling, to live to make other people happy, to bring joy into other people's hearts, right? I think that that's a great way to live, right? To love your God with all your heart and soul and to love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus is quoted as saying that those are the two greatest commandments. I think that's pretty great. And if I'm building a movement that would appeal to people's desire to connect to something spiritual, to get beyond themselves, to love their God, and to have empathy for other human beings, I would say that's great. I mean, there's nothing more communist than that, right? A society where people truly care for one another, a society where people have truly transcended their primitive human instincts to really embrace reason and spiritual higher force. I mean, that sounds great to me. So maybe I'm just being ridiculously religious or whatever. But I as I rediscover my faith as an anti-imperialist, as a communist, a 21st century socialist, I think about these things from a whole different perspective. And I feel like the Weathermen were appealing to people's desire to unleash their resentment and rage and jealousy and anger and libidinal desire to burn things up and let their anger out. And that we are trying to appeal to people's desire to love our God with all our heart and soul and love our neighbor as ourselves. And, I think that there's nothing greater than appealing to what's good in people. And I think about Superman. That's what Superman did, right? Superman is appealing to what's good in people. And Lex Luthor is doing the opposite. So when the Weathermen say, that they want to appeal to the part of every kid that loves Lex Luthor, I don't. I want to appeal to the part of every kid that wants to be Superman. And I want every kid to understand that if you go out and fight for justice and stand up for what's right, and if you go out and defend your community and your family, and you go out and organize, you can be Superman. That's what I want. Superman, you don't have to wear a cape. You don't have to be the only one. You don't have to be in the spotlight. But anybody who organizes and stands for truth and fights for their community, fights for their family, fights for their country, fights against the forces of evil, demands justice, stands up for the downtrodden and the oppressed. Anyone who does that can be Superman, right? And that is actually something that they push in Russia a lot right now. They talk about how during the Second World War, millions and millions of Russians became heroes because they stepped up and made great sacrifices to defend their homeland, to defend their communities. And that social realist art, I would put some on if StreamYard wasn't messing up. Social realist art, that art that they hate, that they invented the CIA's Congress for Cultural Freedom program to destroy. Social realist art is very much about making ordinary people into heroes, making ordinary people into superheroes, showing that ordinary people can be heroes, right? And you look at they make fun of it, that picture of the brawny worker with the hammer, but that's what that picture is showing. That guy in that painting, in that Soviet painting, they make fun of, oh, look, there's a big, strong worker with a hammer. That's the point. That's the point. He's a construction worker with a sledgehammer, but he's on the poster like he's Superman. That's the point, right? That's the point of social realist art. That's the point of Stalinist art. Is, that soldier, that infantry soldier who's just guarding his post with his rifle over his shoulder, that he's a hero. He's Superman, right? That ordinary people who live for the sake of others, who love their mankind, who sacrifice for the oppressed and stand up for justice, they can be heroes. That's why social realist art is so amazing. You could, a firefighter is a hero. A doctor is a hero. A teacher is a hero. A guy who sweeps the streets is a hero, right? A nurse is a hero, right? A construction worker who builds a building is a hero. That's the point. That's the point. That's the point of social realist art. And those old murals that they painted during the Roosevelt administration, and that were painted everywhere. That had big brawny workers and had, you know, factory workers and school kids learning. And that's the point. Social realism or socialist realism, Stalinist art, was about the fact that ordinary people can be heroes. Ordinary people can be heroes. You don't have to be a king. You don't have to be a mythical creature like Hercules or a fictional, you know, sci-fi creation like Superman. Ordinary people can be heroes when they love each other and they stand up for what's right. Ordinary people can be heroes. And so, on that note, folks, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? We got Mark Jones in Utica, New York. Names and locations. Who's with us? We got who else is with us tonight? Ryan in Kansas City. Nate in Chicago, Dustin Schlesinger in Cleveland, Carl Payne in Oregon. Shout out to Carl. QC in Los Angeles. Los Angeles people, email me, please. I might be out there pretty soon. Alex Christopher in New Zealand, Jenny in Cincinnati, me in Wales, Mariah in North Carolina, Ulf in Sweden, Moonlight Beach, John McCarthy in Chicago, Auckland, New Zealand, Philip High in the house. Welcome, Phil. Brisbane, Australia, Ishmael in Los Angeles, Tony in Tasmania, Alex in Brazil, Anthony in Detroit, Enoch in Australia, right? Anthony in Detroit, right? Tom in Maryland, Bob in Troy, New York, Patrick in Maine, Ellie in Chicago, Roy Grant in California, Santa Ana, very, very good. Very, very good. Tom in Maryland, well-intentioned asphalt. Very good. We need more asphalt. We need more roads. Ma Wen Li in Beijing. Welcome, Ma. Good to have you with us. There we go. Names and locations. SH from Malaysia. Welcome, SH from Malaysia. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. All right. Oh, Tyler in Missouri, streaming tonight. Good job with Dr. Shiva. Yeah, Tyler is streaming and watching at the same time. So if you want to watch Tyler stream and watch, he's playing a video game while he watches this. If you want to watch this as a stream within a stream, go and watch it on Tyler's channel. Tyler streaming and watching. I will put that in the chat. Go and subscribe to Tyler's channel. He does great stuff. Go and subscribe. There you go. This is the link for Tyler's channel. He's streaming and watching. So there we go. Go and watch Tyler. Good stuff. Good stuff there. You know, I am all for people doing that. If you want to stream yourself playing video games while I'm on here, I think that's a great thing to do. We got Nick in Las Vegas. We got China Seasoned Noob, the Seasoned Noob, right? In China, right? Very good, very, very good. Very, very good. Anybody else? Kenny in Malaysia. Wow, multiple people from Malaysia tonight. Good to have you with us. Malaysians. Good to have you with us. I'm the man. That's damn right. Love you too, Tyler. Much love to you. Tyler is an awesome dude, and that is awesome. Who is with us tonight? Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Quanos, welcome, Quanos. Aziz, Sydney in Australia. So I don't know what it is tonight, but it's not showing the super chats on the screen. So I'm actually having to go to YouTube to see the super chats. You know, and there doesn't seem to be any Rumble rants, but there are some super chats. So I'm going to start answering the super chats, and I can see them on the YouTube channel. I go to fan funding and they come up. So what is the first one is from Battle Cossack, and he asks me, oh, we got Andrew in Argentina, Sydney, Australia. Welcome. Battle Cossack, oh, Melbourne. I didn't skip you. I'm seeing you as you come in, man. A lot come by. It's not personal. If I don't see you, it's not personal. I want to put every name on the screen. It's not personal. I see you. Eastern Washington State, but yeah, I see them as they come by. It's not personal. Not personal. Please don't take it personally if I didn't put you on the screen. I try to put everyone that I see on the screen, but it doesn't always work out that way. And for some reason tonight in particular, StreamYard is acting pretty weird because usually I can set it up so I just start putting the I put the super chats on the screen, but they're not doing that. I have to scroll up for the super chats. So maybe I'll do that. Okay, maybe I'll just start scrolling up for the super chats, right? So I guess I'll do it that way. I can scroll up and I can still put them on the screen. That'll be easier. So I won't see the chat as it's coming in necessarily, but yeah, there we go. So yeah, we'll just start it doing it that way. So I'm scrolling down. Okay, first one. What is true about the Khmer Rouge of Cambodia? Are they exaggerating the Cambodian genocide? Well, look, I have always been very opposed to Pol Pot. And the reason that I've been opposed to Pol Pot is because Pol Pot was aligned with the United States against the Vietnamese who were aligned with the Soviet Union. And the book that I often recommend to people to read about the Kampuchea War is published by a communist group called Line of March in the early 80s, which were a group of Maoists who kind of broke with China. And they published this very, very good book. The author is Erwin Silber, who is actually a folk musician who played with Pete Seeger. And it's called The Revolution Rescued. And there's actually a PDF of it online. And basically it goes over how, Revolution Rescued, Erwin Silber. I'll link the PDF in the chat. It goes over how basically Pol Pot, he mismanaged the economy, and he said they could have full communism on the basis of an agrarian economy, which is ridiculous. And he then attacked Vietnam in alliance with the United States, and it was a disaster. And I think very poorly of Pol Pot. And that 1978, the Kampuchea War, where it started out with Vietnam fighting against Cambodia. And then China invaded Vietnam. That was a disaster. I mean, the USA had just pulled out of Vietnam, and then thousands of communists were killing other communists. Revolution Rescued by Erwin Silber. That is the book that I recommend. I'll drop it in the Rumble too. And there's a PDF. I'm linking the PDF there. You can read it, and it just kind of goes into detail about how Pol Pot, his year zero philosophy, that they could have poverty, they could have socialism and full communism in Cambodia on the basis of an agrarian economy, forcibly evacuating the cities. I mean, he was not a city builder. He was a city destroyer. He was a city evacuator. It was bloodthirsty peasant Jacobinism. And it was very much a socialism about revenge. And it was very much, we don't believe in economic growth and progress. We just believe in making everyone equal. And it was funded by the United States to oppose genuine communism, right? And that's well documented now at this point, that Pol Pot was funded by the United States. And it was not good. I mean, that whole situation is not good. The other book that I do recommend, and I'm critical of Sam Marcy, honestly, right? And in this book, I mean, this book, I don't totally agree with it because he defends the Gang of Four and the Cultural Revolution a little bit in the book, and I don't. But people I do respect, like Jyoti Brar, they do. So, there is some disagreement. There's a book called Imperialism and the Crisis in the Socialist Camp by Sam Marcy, and that's the book that he wrote about the Pol Pot War. And in that book, he basically describes how, when China invaded Vietnam in 1978, the Kampuchea War, it was happening at the request of the United States, right? That was, China was aligned with the United States. The USA claimed to be neutral, but it was very much, done as an anti-Soviet move to please the United States. And Sam Marcy documents that in there, and that basically, China, because the Soviet Union had cut them off, because the Soviet Union had isolated them, China had to get support from somebody. They had to get foreign investment. They were a very poor country, so they got foreign investment from the United States. What else were they? I mean, they had really no other option. But in order to do that, in order to get the United States to trust them, they had to back up the United States and its foreign policy, and that led to a disaster. And the Kampuchea War was a disaster, and I think it was a disaster, and I blame largely Pol Pot for that. Imperialism and the Crisis in the Socialist Camp by Sam Marcy. Those are the two books on that situation that I would recommend. So that is an answer to the first super chat about Pol Pot. And those are the two resources. Go read Erwin Silber, Revolution Rescued. Go read Imperialism and the Crisis in the Socialist Camp by Sam Marcy. All right, now I'm going to scroll all the way up again, and we're going to do the next super chat. Dum 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 dum. Is that the theme from Bonanza, some old television show? All right, the next one is from Gabby. Thank you, Gabby. Very kind. We do appreciate, thank you, Gabby. Gabby is a beloved member of our community. Gabby is awesome. She's out in Chicago. I think she was at the Victory Day event that just happened out there that some of our comrades were at. Shout out to you, Gabby. You're awesome. Good to hear from you. Glad you're here. All right. When Kim Jong-il died, they claimed it was a personality cult because Kim never did anything for the Koreans, right? Ha, 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 ha. Why didn't they do the same here? Now, I don't quite know what you're getting at. When Kim Jong-il died, they claimed it was a personality cult because Kim never did anything for the Koreans, right? Why didn't they do the same here? I mean, are you talking about when a president in America dies, they don't claim it's a personality cult? Is that what you're saying? I mean, I think every country admires its leaders to some degree or other. Every country looks up to the president. And that's actually one of the more negative things about Trump. I think Trump was better than Biden in a lot of ways. I honestly hope that Trump wins the next election because things are so bad with Biden right now, and the political situation is so bad. But honestly, one of the bad things about the Trump presidency is that Trump's an asshole. And part of Trump's appeal is he sounds like an asshole, right? I mean, Trump, like, that's his whole thing. You're fired, right? And that and that Trump has this kind of like selling point of like, I am just an asshole, right? I mean, and that is not good, right? And that, I don't think there are many parents who want their kid to grow up to be Donald Trump. And that's not a good sign, right? And I think that's why a number of conservatives didn't particularly like Trump, because Trump is not a role model, right? Trump is, the way he runs his mouth on social media, the insult comedy and the selfishness and all of that. A lot of parents, the values they want their kids to have, they don't see in Trump. A lot of people that might like Trump as a political leader because they're mad at the political establishment, they also don't want to, they don't want their kid to grow up to be Trump. Ideally, the president should be someone that we all look up to. Now, Biden certainly isn't that either, but Biden pretends to be, but it's fake. And Donald Trump, that's what people liked about Trump. He tells it like it is, right? He's crass and rude and selfish, and he's honest, right? Whereas Biden, he follows the right script, but he's a lying sack of shit, and he sexually assaulted Tara Reid, and he's a corrupt politician, and his son is selling paintings for millions of dollars as if that isn't corruption. He's just such a good painter, and Burisma Holdings, and right, Biden is a phony pretending to be someone we could have our kids look up to. Donald Trump is just like, I am an asshole, I am selfish, I make lots of money, and that's what I do. And it's like relieving for people to be like, yeah, somebody who's sticking it to them. But at the same time, don't you wish we had like a real political leader who genuinely believed what they said, who acted out of genuine goodwill? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to have like a real leader in this country, not someone pretending to be a good leader, and not somebody who's being an asshole to like stick it to an establishment full of frauds and telling it like it is, but rather somebody who is actually doing what a leader should do? I mean, wouldn't that be the ideal thing to have? I mean, that's what I would like to see. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see real leadership. And that's a thing I keep coming back to. That's what I said to Putin, at the World Youth Festival. I mean, you can see the video. I said to him, thank you for showing people in the United States what real leadership looks like, because he's a real leader. right? Putin is not a gangster. Let me just throw this out there. Our culture is increasingly becoming gangsterfied, and that's not good. There was a time in my life where I thought maybe revolutionaries were like gangsters. I romanticized. I'm way past that. Putin is not a gangster. Putin's a family man. He emphasizes family values. He emphasizes people loving their community and working together. Xi Jinping is not a gangster, right? He is a responsible, a leader who gets things done, but it is our Western leaders that are acting like gangsters. They always tell us, oh, the leaders of these countries are gangsters. No, they're not. No, they are not. Right? It is the Western leaders and the gangster culture where you flaunt your wealth, you wave around, look at all my money, I got loads of money. And if somebody disses you, you got to mess them up because no one messes with you, and it's not just a black thing. Don't get me wrong. This is, gangster culture. It goes far beyond, that's the stereotype that we get from gangster rap and all of that, but it is not just a black thing. It is definitely not that, right? The Italian mafia was doing the same thing. You talk about John Gotti, the Dapper Don, and all of this, right? This notion that acting like criminals act, where you threaten people, you make a big show of how much money you have rivalries with people, and if somebody disses you, you got to mess them up, that culture, right? That culture that's toxic, right? And I will say that's one thing people said about the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. At the height of the Soviet Union, people all wanted to be like Stalin, because Stalin was portrayed in Soviet media as this selfless, fatherly figure fighting for the good of the nation. Now, Stalin himself admitted that the image of Stalin in Soviet media was false. He banned interviews with his mother because he was sick of hearing them. That's true. Stalin actually forbid anyone in Russian media. After they had interviewed his mother so many times, he said, this has got to stop. I don't want my mother on TV anymore. And he outlawed any interviews with his mother. And there's a story that I've often told people. It's in Court of the Red Tsar by Simon Sebag Montefiore, right? Which is one of the only Stalin biographers who's like, he's not a communist in any way. He's a stodgy old conservative in Britain. And so they let him, before the Russia-Ukraine stuff got intense years ago, like 20 years ago, they let him write 2 books about Stalin that are oddly favorable, where he says things like Stalin can't be equated with Hitler. Stalin is a lot like Napoleon. He's just kind of the creator of a modern country. He created modern Russia. He speaks very favorably of Stalin. He wrote Young Stalin and Court of the Red Tsar, Simon Sebag Montefiore. And it's actually, he's the only like Western historian who actually has an interest in who Stalin really was. And if you read Court of the Red Tsar, or if you read Young Stalin, you get a picture of who Stalin actually was, right? I think I have his book, Young Stalin, right here. You get an image of who Stalin, the poet, Stalin, the seminary school student, who Stalin actually was. And in Court of the Red Tsar, which is the other book that Montefiore wrote, he tells the story of, Stalin's daughter was walking around with him one time, and she saw a propaganda poster. And she said, "Daddy, are you Stalin?" And he said, No, I'm not Stalin. I'm your father. That's just a propaganda poster. That's Stalin." And that showed that Stalin knew that the image that they had portrayed of him was false, and it was not good, right? And he actually, in some cases, he was so disgusted, and it shows this. He was so disgusted by the over the top nature of the cult of personality that they built around him that he actually urged them to tone it down. Like one thing, and Grover Furt, and I've talked about this. Like Stalin was not expelled from seminary school for being a communist, right? That sounds great, wouldn't it? He was such a communist and he was organizing the young people at the seminary school and teaching them Marxism. They kicked him out. He wasn't expelled for being a communist. He was expelled because his mother stopped paying his dues. They'd stopped paying tuition because he was always getting in trouble, right? Stalin smuggled books into the school that were forbidden. They had a rule at the school you could only read religious books. And so Stalin went to the local bookstore and he had like a book underground smuggling ring to make money. And Stalin was, he would fight with his teachers. There's a story that, one of his teachers was speaking, making fun of Georgia, which was the part of part of the Russian Empire that he grew up in, and he yelled at his teacher and disrespected his teacher. How dare you speak about my people that way? Stalin was a young rebel, and he was a troublemaker in school. And his mom finally said, if you're going to keep screwing around and getting in trouble, I'm going to stop paying your bills. Because his mother had to work really, really hard to get him into seminary school. There was no way that was within their means. But he wasn't kicked out for being a communist. But that's often, if you read Soviet propaganda from the 1930s, the biographies of Stalin from that era, I think I have one of them here. It'll tell you Stalin was kicked out of school because he was preaching communism. I think it says that in here. And this is the political biography of Stalin that was published by the Communist Party in the 1940s. And I think it says that in here, if I'm not mistaken. And that's just not true. I mean, that's technically not the truth. And that the cult of personality built around Stalin was a bit cringe, and even Stalin couldn't handle it at some point. So they have to lie because Americans favor peace. And that is so true, right? And that's the worst thing. The Naria testimony and all the lies about chemical weapons and all of that, what are they doing? They know most people are good. Most people deep down are good. And if they hear about people on the other side of the planet being killed, they want to help them. That's good. And so these basic feelings of human solidarity, brotherhood, and kindness and compassion, they manipulate them. Right? And that's what makes Samantha Power and the whole human rights industry, that's what makes them so sinister, is they're appealing to the people's goodness and they're manipulating it. And what happens? It's like the little boy who cried wolf, right? And eventually there's going to be a situation where people around the world really do need help. And people are going to go, I've heard that before. That sounds like propaganda. I mean, it is really unfortunate, right? They're appealing to people's good sentiments, right? And they're twisting them for evil. And in the long term, that leads to people not believing anything. So there you go. All right. What's the next one? I'm just scrolling up because StreamYard is acting weird tonight. Good to see everybody. I hope that you found my opening remarks inspiring. I took it in a lot of different directions, but there you go. All right. Just scrolling up here. What's the next one? Oh, I already did that one, right? Okay. So we already did about people having to lie because they favor peace. All right. We're going to scroll down. All right, just getting to the next super chat here, right? Because I have to scroll through all the chat to find them. All right. Oh, here we go. Funky says, how can the proletariat combat automation as it drives down our wages and quality of life? Well, Funky, we don't want to combat automation. We want to combat the effects of automation. If you try to fight against technology, that's just it's like trying to stop the tide in the ocean or whatever. I mean, it's just, we want technological advancement, but we need to demand that as our labor becomes more productive, we get higher pay. All right. That's one thing we need to demand. We need higher compensation for our labor, right? We need more vacation, right? As human labor becomes more productive, life should get easier for us. And the only way to do that is with class struggle, right? Because our human labor is so much more productive because of technology, we should get way more pay for it because we're producing way more value with our time. But it doesn't work that way. And in fact, our labor has become way more productive and our pay has gone down. And we need a labor movement. We need labor unions to combat that, right? I mean, if our labor is producing more wealth and value, we should get more pay. But that's not the way these things work. That's not the way capitalism works, right? And that we need to combat the effects of automation by demanding that we, as our labor is more productive, we get more benefits. We get more paid time off. We get a shorter workday. We get, better pay and better conditions, right? And that's really the only way you can combat that. All right. Weatherman and their allies firebombed federal property and never saw a prison. And I got questions about what's going on there, right? I mean, the fact that they're all children of millionaires and billionaires, but there was clearly some kind of fight in the deep state during these years. I mean, we know that, right? And that the ruling class were fighting among themselves, and and the fact that they all turned themselves in right before Jimmy Carter left office, right? Because Reagan wouldn't have given them those deals. The Carter administration, I mean, there was, I have a timeline and it's in the new textbook, and it's in the end of Where is America Going, where I go over 1978 to 1981, the transition from Jimmy Carter, the last 2 years of Jimmy Carter's presidency versus the first year of Reagan. A lot was happening. And that's the year of the Greensboro Massacre. That's the year of Jonestown. That's the year of the death to Deng Xiaoping and the USA establishing diplomatic relations with China. That's when the USA boycotted the 1980 Olympics. I mean, there's so much that happened in those 4 years. And the Italian government collapsed because it was revealed the CIA had the P2 Masonic Lodge. And that sounds like something out of a crazy conspiracy theory, but it actually happened. You know, the P2 Lodge. There's a whole Wikipedia page about it. How basically it was revealed that you know, the CIA had this underground secret society in the Italian government that was manipulating the elections and funneling weapons and smuggling things all over the world. The propaganda do, or the P2 Masonic Lodge in Italy was revealed. And the Italian government had to step down. They had to have elections because so many people had to quit because there had been so much illegal activity revealed. I mean, so much was happening, right? It was, you know, the new left, the Brzezinski, Rockefeller Eastern establishment came out of the 1960s political crisis so emboldened. And they got rid of Nixon. And, you know, Jimmy Carter was the first like degrowth president, right? He published the, what do you call it? There's a document, the Global 2000 report, and he started purging the Democratic Party with scam and getting rid of smokestack Democrats who believed in economic growth and were tied to labor unions. And the Brzezinski crowd, they were wrecking the U.S. economy, and things were getting really bad. And Ronald Reagan represented the lower levels of capital. At first he was kind of like a Trump. He represented the lower levels of capital, the military industrial complex and others that were saying, we can't have this anymore. We need to rebuild the military and we need economic growth again. And, you know, of course, they blamed the left for it, just like now a lot of Trumpers think that Biden is a communist. They blamed the left and they blamed the Iranian Revolution, and it was very confused. And you know, Ronald Reagan was then forced to bring in Bush and the neocons, right? And Ronald Reagan took office, and then he got shot right after he took office, and Ronald Reagan kind of backed away from his more far right positions and kind of became a neocon president. And then the late Cold War normal set in. But the transition from Carter to Reagan, which I've studied extensively, when you talk about gangs and counter gangs and divisions in the ruling class and intelligence manipulating politics, right? Go and read the appendix in Where is America Going? And I have, you know, there's 4 years of American politics where the ruling class were fighting with each other. There was a war going on. The Yankee and Cowboy War, I would argue, escalated in 1978 to 1981. And that period needs to be re-examined because that's when the new communist movement of the 70s died. After 1981, 82, it was on its way out, right? And by 84, the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign of 84 was really the end of the new communist movement of the 70s. All the communist groups kind of dissolved. Like that was the end. Because the war was over, right? There'd been a big division in the ruling class. There'd been a lot of confusion, and you know, and this is important to understand. But anyway, we have another super chat here. Is it good that certain countries are recognizing Palestine? Absolutely, it's good, right? Any support for the Palestinians right now, you know, any support for them is good, right? I mean, Israel is murdering them and killing them, and anyone who calls out Israel for its crimes, grants recognition to the Palestinians, that's good. The Palestinian Authority is very corrupt. Let's not, you know, pretend otherwise. They are very corrupt, and they very much collaborate with Israel, right? The Palestinian Authority is certainly an entity that a lot of Palestinians and Palestine solidarity activists, you know, Mahmoud Abbas, are very disappointed in. But the fact that Palestine is getting more recognition, even though the United Nations has been blocked from recognizing them, you know, that's a good thing, right? More support for Palestine, etc., is a good thing. All right, folks. Well, it's been a fun stream tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. I am headed to the printers tomorrow to pick up copies of our new pamphlet. I've got, you know, I'm headed to the printers tomorrow morning. I'm going on with Tara Reid. I'll try to have that on this channel also. I don't know if that will work, but I'm going to have it on this channel if possible. you know, and then I am headed to Queens to get this pamphlet. You know, I am going to get the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of copies. And shout out to Carl, the Trinket Man, who worked really, really hard to make this happen and made the arrangement with the printer and everything and laid it out. And shout out to everybody, Peter Coffin and John McCarthy, and so many people helped us do this. We have put out a really, really good piece of anti-imperialist literature that will speak to libertarians. I am convinced that libertarians will see this and be convinced. So my hope is that you will, you know, somebody will, you know, if folks can help me out, you know, offset the costs of going to DC this weekend, etc. Cash App, Caleb Moppin 22. That would help. And that would help with the printing costs. That would help offset the printing costs for this pamphlet. If you're able to help me out, that would be great. $10, $20, shoot me something my way to make it go a little easier for me to, you know, do what I got to do in DC this weekend. Always appreciated. But other than that, folks, I think it's great. I'm going to say goodnight for now. I'm going to put on the closing music. So here we go. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Hold on. That video already exists, Mr. Wonderful. Hold on. It's called Socialist Math. It's really a great thing. Peter made a great video, and yes, it already exists. So if you want to circulate it, there it is. There it is. Socialist Math. There it is. You know, there's the link in the chat. It's already there. So please circulate it, Mr. Wonderful. If you liked it, please share it everywhere. It is really a great video that Peter Coffin made. So there you go. All right. Thanks, everybody.